The damage done by COVID, by Brexit, by this government will take a long time to fix. The Institute for Public Policy Research has warned in a new report that it will take nearly a decade to shrink the NHS waiting list back to 2010 levels. And the backlog in the legal system, in the court system, is unlikely to return until 2033. It's extraordinary. A single parliamentary term would not be enough to sort out the difference in attainment between wealthier and poorer secondary school pupils, to get that back to the levels that were present at 2017, and even those levels were already failing. People feel that public services are broken. To get them back to what they were will take a long time. Maybe we shouldn't be looking at that. Maybe what we should be doing is now taking the initiative and changing them completely. And maybe that means that we need to ditch a lot of the bureaucracy which has overwhelmed and strangled the NHS. If we truly want a National Health Service, we need to get rid of the stuff. We need to get rid of the bindweed which is choking it. And we don't look to the people who are on strike, to the nurses or the doctors. We look to the bureaucrats who never go on strike and who are paid astronomically large amounts of money for doing what? For getting it wrong again and again and again. And when it comes to education, maybe we need to do much the same sort of thing. Rather than paying a huge amount of money to people to run Ofsted, we need to put our confidence in the schools themselves. We need to make the schools responsible to the local communities, rather than to some national initiative that isn't hitting the marks. If the answer is to hire more teachers who are better, well, where are they? Surely, with the little money that we've got, we're hiring the very best teachers that we can. Well, we're not. The reality is, a lot of teachers in our secondary schools are second rate. Why? Why? Because maybe there's something wrong with our teacher training. Maybe there's something wrong with the way we are going about teaching at the moment. Because actually we're teaching to a scheme to keep the Ofsted inspectors happy, rather than to ensure that children are genuinely learning. We shouldn't be measuring what we taught in a school. We should be measuring what the children learnt in a school. Maybe our method of even measuring how much children have learnt, maybe the method of doing these national exams needs to be re-examined. Any government formed at the next general election will have the most challenging context, we're told by this report, since the Second World War. A toxic combination of rising demand, stretched resources, misguided reform, the pandemic, government cuts, and so on, as well as international war. And its analysis fits in very well by the concerns of the Labour Party, that if it won election, it would require 2 terms in government to implement its plans for a decade of national renewal. And even then, after 2 terms in government, it still wouldn't be at the point where it's starting to change things for the better. It will have only got things to the point where they were before Brexit. Brexit is the unspoken villain in this particular story. Brexit, the cost of living, the Ukraine war, the COVID epidemic. But all of these things coming together. And what about new technology? Can we enlist the opportunities that new technology offers? And I'm not speaking here particularly of ChatGPT, 4 or whatever it's called, or Open AI, there are other technologies available. As automation takes root, we're going to see more and more people out of work. But we're also going to see more and more people engaged in keeping that automation running. So more and more people need to retrain. But nevertheless, we are still going to have to recognize that AI will do a lot of the jobs that are already done by people in work at the moment. There will be more unemployment. And maybe people who lose jobs to AI can find employment elsewhere, but it's not going to be an automatic certainty. And the idea that we are going to be able to train people up to meet our needs in the immediate future, that's a fantasy. The only way we can meet the gaps in the market in the immediate future is by employing people from abroad. So this fantasy about migration needs to be clipped. It needs to be nipped in the bud. It needs to be dumped. It is a fantasy and a distraction. We need people to care for the sick, the elderly, and we're not going to get them in the UK, because if they were here, they would be doing the job. We need better teachers, and we're not going to get them in the UK, because if they were here, they would be doing the job. At the same time, we definitely need to train up new people to do those jobs from the UK, but they're not going to fix the problem immediately. They're not going to fill that immediate need. That immediate need needs to be filled by others. And the more we use AI to fill our immediate need, the less chance there is that people who are looking at careers in the future will have them. So we need to do a lot of rethinking. I think it's not just about going back to 2017. It's about advancing to the past and rethinking the future. It's advancing actually well beyond 2017. I think it's advancing somewhere into the early part of the 21st century, and then moving forward with skills that we now can see we need. But we're not going to do anything by wringing our hands and opining, by wringing our hands and complaining that we haven't got enough people in the UK to do the job, or that we have got enough people in the UK to do the job. We haven't. We need dedicated technicians, dedicated professionals to do the professional jobs that are not being done at the moment and that are hindering any form of development and any form of functionality. We can't function in this country when the trains don't work. We can't function in this country when the post doesn't work. I told a story a while ago how I got a letter which had been sent first class a week earlier, saying that a friend of mine had died and that her funeral was on the Friday. I got it on the Friday morning, at about the time when the funeral was taking place. I was appalled. I was appalled that that's the way that our post office has degenerated. And when I wrote to the post office, about 2 months later, I finally got a letter back saying, "Oh, we've had problems with staffing." That's of no interest to me. We can't rely on the post office. We can't rely on the NHS. We can't rely on the railways. Therefore, these things don't work. And the only way to sort that out is not to dedicate ourselves to training new people who will take on these jobs in 5-10 years' time, because it takes at least 7 years to train a doctor. But while we're doing that, to employ people from abroad. There is no alternative.